Did you ever experience that sinking feeling? Hunch in your gut that the woman you love may be seeking a certain object or another person? That small, persistent voice in Am I enough is a whisper in your thoughts. The majority of males ignore it. They reveal in their own words, She wouldn't, not my girl. In actuality, though, it's more widespread than you consider. And what I'm about to share with you is not meant to frighten you. It's for your protection, because it costs a lot to be ignorant in love, and your heart is the price, your honor, and occasionally your lifetime. Have faith. The harsh reality is that society refuses to discuss about. Women are more likely to cheat, more than men, and prior to your thoughts leaping to defensive denial, pay close attention. This is not a matter of judgment. It concerns psychology, about human nature, regarding the unconscious tendencies that women possess quietly, and men rarely follow the norms. Comprehend men, you are conditioned by society to believe that infidelity is a problem faced by men. Jokes, movies, and even the stories of your friends give the impression that men are the predators. However, the data presents a different picture. In devoted relationships, women have an equal chance of. Occasionally, it is even more likely to step beyond their restraints. Why? Due to women's emotional needs are more important, more than you've been trained to observe. A lady can be attractive, prosperous, considerate partner, and still feel as though her emotional needs are not being met, is not fulfilled. And when she looks for that link somewhere, it's not necessarily regarding sex. Validation is the key. Interest, feeling wanted, and experiencing strong. It's a psychological issue. It's primordial. Additionally, if you fail to see it, you're unaware of the danger. However, here is where the majority of the catastrophic error is made by men. They presume love is sufficient to keep a connection. That loyalty comes naturally. That regard is certain. That your efforts will always be reflected in your choices. It's naive. And men are left behind, susceptible to treachery that might have been foreseen and possibly avoided if they had a thorough understanding of female psychology, most seductive, darkest, and deepest level. Thus, I'm going to disclose men's signs and realities women don't tell you miss, as well as the recurring trends silently in all of the relationships. By ultimately, you will either awaken to reality or you will choose to overlook it and pay the emotional cost. You have an option. However, awareness is the first step, and a single query is the first step toward awareness. Are you able to see past what she shows you? How does she really feel? This is the reality men generally don't notice. Women are wired to put allegiance to the test, not always intentionally, but naturally. It has nothing to do with being bad or figuring it's about surviving. Attraction as well as social dynamics that have developed over centuries and are hardwired. When a woman is aware of her social or emotional, when her demands aren't entirely satisfied, she starts to scenarios that are running in the background, little ideas that could grow into larger acts if disregarded. And this is the hazardous portion. She is frequently confused by men, checking for innocuous attention-seeking, friendship, or even flirtation. They throw it away. They chuckle. They believe she's just kidding. However, such minuscule signals are the initial phases of a much larger pattern. The majority of men think that cheating occurs overnight, one error in a weak point. However, feminine treachery is typically a slow burn. It begins emotionally, long before it ever turns into physical. She looks to others for approval. She doesn't receive any praise at home. She engages in dialogue with someone fresh who pays attention without judgment, a person who reflects the she longs for admiration. And each and every time there, she is recognized. Her thoughts changes the way she perceives her present companion. This is the subtle psychology those guys are missing. Moreover, this is what makes it even more hazardous. A woman hardly ever intends to intentionally harm her partner, the compartmentalization and concealment. She is protected by this mental dance. From guilt as she works toward what she subliminally feels she is deserving, she justifies it. She provides justification. He no longer pays attention to me. He's constantly occupied. I'm worthy of enthusiasm. Meanwhile, the man continues to unaware, believing that since she smiles because she's loving, due of her continued presence, nothing is incorrect. Here's the catch, though. It's not merely sentimental. These actions change her chemistry. Her body starts to react to the notice she's getting. Somewhere else, little flirtations with emotion produce alterations in the nervous system, dopamine, adrenaline, strengthening the allure of someone who is not involved in the connection. It's unseen, it's strong, and it occurs far earlier than a single kiss, a single text, or just one admission. The majority of guys just observe the final phase, the obvious treachery, and it's already too late. I wonder why I missed it. However, currently, they're teaching you to see it, to identify the early, nearly undetectable indicators that come before adultery, to comprehend the psychology prior to it appears in a bodily form. Because being aware the clues, the minute changes in, you have a choice because of attention and desire to take action, safeguard, or alter the course of your partnership, or to experience the heartache that comes with ignorance assurances. Let's discuss the warning signs, the silent, often imperceptible signs that most men overlook it entirely. These are the patterns that foreshadow danger. Any treachery is exposed, and this is the harsh reality. If you're not making payments focus, you won't realize it until it's too late. Take note of her attention first. A lady with a strong emotional attachment to someone else will begin to split her up. Concentrate. At first, it is subtle. A persistent pause as she's looking at her phone conversing with you. A grin at a note that lights her up in a way that you've not seen for several months. Men ignore these indicators because they seem innocuous, even insignificant. But each and every A minor distraction of her focus is a thread degrading your connection. Disregarded continually, the strands come loose to complete emotional bond outside your partnership. Second, observe how she communicates women who are already thinking about it or starting to engage in emotional infidelity to retreat, not out of rage or disagreement, but in subtle ways, shorter answers, delayed responses, and little information about her day. She may still appear affectionate personally, but the strength of the bond, the intimacy begins to fade. And when a man fails to notice this, he presumes everything is fine, never realizing that she is investing her emotional energy somewhere else. Third, see how she has changed. Self-image. She's suddenly more aware of her look, more receptive to communications. You may never see them, or they are more covert regarding her social media and phone. These aren't superficial behaviors. They're signs that energy is being diverted. She's getting ready to be noticed outside the partnership. Men tend to justify this as being typical or conceited, but psychology demonstrates that it's a typical prelude to infidelity. Fourth, see how she handles disagreement. Women who cheat emotionally tend to stay away from intense disputes or rerouting talks about unimportant topics. This is a defense system. She is defending herself. Covert emotional investments. You may believe she's merely trying to avoid conflict, but she is compartmentalizing herself, as seen by this emotional existence, making room in the mind for another individual. This is what the majority of males not comprehend. These indicators are regular, dependable, and infrequently arbitrary. Cheating on emotions is methodical. It develops over several weeks and months. Because they concentrate, men miss it on the obvious, intimate physical contact, disputes, or a dramatic admission. However, betrayal typically goes unnoticed, discreetly in ways that are invisible from a psychological standpoint until it blows up. Now consider whether you have been neglecting these little signals. Did you become lulled into ease as your partnership shifts silently? The distinction between you can deal with heartbreak and knowledge. To recognize these signs, respond to them, and keep yourself safe before the damage is done. Let's now explore what genuinely motivates a lady to the psychological factors for infidelity that men seldom comprehend, and the activities that unwittingly force her nearer to another person. The majority of males believe it all comes down to temptation, a one impetuous moment. The reality is far more intricate and much more manageable than you've been told. Have faith. The emotional environment of a woman is sensitive. She yearns for attention, intimacy, as well as validation. When these needs are disregarded, or worse, it leaves a gap that will never be filled entirely satisfied by love alone. You may be supplying security, stability, and even affectionate physical contact. However, if her mind does not feel wanted, heard, or seen, she starts looking elsewhere. It's not only a lack of confidence, the biological circuitry is the cause. Combined with social conduct that has been learned, she must feel valued, selected, and stirred in the mind. If you continuously deny her this, she will unconsciously begin looking for it outside of your partnership. An additional predictability is the trigger. Men tend to get into habits, excellent routines, but ones that are predictable. The same discussions, the same meals, the similar behaviors. Women are inherently observant. Subtle shifts in energy and focus. When the excitement, uncertainty, or as the emotional fervor wanes, her thoughts unconsciously starts investigating new relationships that offer the possibility of excitement, both originality and acknowledgement. Sexual activity isn't necessarily the first step in this. Yearning. Frequently, it starts with emotional curiosity. The dopamine that comes with being noticed in a fresh, thrilling manner can surpass years of fidelity if disregarded. Emotional neglect. The silent killer is work. The majority of guys undervalue the emotional and mental work a woman puts into a partnership. Paying attention, retaining minor details, confirming emotions, establishing a shared. These are not optional in the emotional world for her pleasure. When a man is unable to contribute often to this unseen work, her mental energy floats. Additionally, as energy veers, desire comes next. Then there's animosity, simmering minor setbacks that men don't acknowledge. I went unnoticed by him today. He overlooked my birthday. He appears unconcerned about my interests. Every microsecond adds up, arranging themselves in a brick-like stack. If left unchecked, it produces emotional and mental detachment. And distance is a good place for emotional deception. This is the unsettling reality. Men frequently quicken this procedure, unaware. A lack of consciousness, acts of dismissiveness or complacency, such as fuel for a fire. A man's disregard increases. The more of these triggers his partners, the mind looks elsewhere for fulfillment. This is not a form of manipulation. It is human. Psychology at work. Thus, ask yourself, sincerely, are you unintentionally producing rifts in your partnership? The weapon that most guys lack is awareness. Understanding these triggers provides you with the opportunity to do action to stop the emotional drift before it turns into a treachery. So once it's ingrained, once her thoughts are focused elsewhere, emotionally catching up is nearly not possible. Let's now discuss one of the most hazardous relationships in connections, the nuanced ways in which a woman justifies or manipulates her own actions, and the way that men unintentionally allow it. The majority of males believe manipulation is deliberate, a deliberate plan. However, in practice, it frequently begins as an unconscious psychological defensive strategy, a means of defending drift of emotions without remorse. A female who starts to emotionally cheat or frequently physically rewires her own brain to make the actions appropriate. For example, she convinces herself, he doesn't value me, I'm worthy. Enthusiasm, it's just innocent. Pay attention. These innate defenses safeguard her from guilt while also opening the way to more profound emotional engagement with another individual. And this is the part that males always overlook. When a woman believes that her wants, she ceases to speak, to be honest. She begins generating mental obstacles. Additionally, men perceive these as slight changes in mood, tension, or brief distance, not the initial indications of treachery. Partitioning comes next. A woman will construct mental compartments, distancing her from her affection for you, focus on someone else, to the outer world, which includes you. Everything appears typical. She is able to laugh, grin, and preserve closeness at home while investing emotionally at the same time, somewhere else. For most men, love is binary. Either she is loyal or she is not. The psychology of women doesn't function in white and black. It's fluid. Additionally, this emotional wander is nearly impossible with fluidity invisible unless closely observed. Pay attention. Next is projection, which is a psychological ploy that both sexes employ. However, women frequently use unconscious connections. She might charge you with actions that she finds amusing, evaluating your responses. You're indifferent. Concerning me, you're constantly aloof. It's not always deliberate dishonesty. It's a method to excuse her and externalize her guilt, emotional need, and even control. Return your focus to her. Men frequently react defensively, which raises her emotional detachment without being aware of it. They've taken advantage of her mental plan. Lastly, let's discuss confidentiality. Social media, phones, and private messages. These aren't always instruments of active treachery, but they facilitate it. When a lady experiences emotional, when ignored, the human brain naturally looks for attention, reward systems, and confirmation. Little inaccuracies or omissions can spiral, making room in the mind for emotional ties to another place. Men observe confidentiality as small transgressions, but in actuality, it serves as the psychological link to treachery. This is the harsh reality. Men hardly ever recognize the thought processes that, prior to cheating, they observe the exterior, behaviors, perhaps an amorous text, a working late at night, acting aloof, yet fail to recognize the psychology that propels it. If you comprehend these strategies, these ways of thinking, you can act quickly. You can identify the warning signs before they turn into heartache. Men, let's be honest about the signs. Routinely fail. The actions and subtle body language indicators that show a woman is drifting, either literally or emotionally. Most men believe that infidelity manifests itself in clear-cut methods. Covert phone conversations, arriving late, avoiding closeness. However, psychology presents a different picture. Frequently, the indicators are silent, nearly unseen, and only apparent if you understand what to search for. Watch her first. Vitality. A female who is experiencing emotional decline. Investment will begin to reroute her, divert your energies, even if she's in the flesh. She might come out as aloof in discussions, preoccupied during private moments, or indifferent to things she used to enjoy doing with you. Men consider this to be fatigue, tension, or moodiness. However, in practice, it's a slight change in focus. Emotional vitality always goes with what she wants, and if her energy wanders, and so is her attachment. Secondly, take attention of her body language. When she's feeling something, her eye contact, body language, and gestures are involved. However, when she becomes aloof, her body communicates alienation in a subtle way. Arms crossed, avoiding extended eye-making contact, bending back during discussions, or establishing unseen obstacles. The way she laughs, even touches or interactions, might vary in subtle ways. Men tend to overlook these minor adjustments, believing they are unimportant. However, they are indicators. Third, make a payment. Observe how people behave online. We reside in a world where screens rule. When the woman's focus starts to change, little digital transformations take place. Longer phone screen time, abrupt confidentiality regarding messages, new contacts on social media, or a change in her internet persona. These are not always conclusive evidence of treachery, but they are indications that emotional vitality is being changed, and emotional vitality is the first step toward physical activity. Fourth, observe her investment in your common existence. An emotional woman attached will continuously contribute to collaborative experiences, scheduling dates, demonstrating enthusiasm for significant events, taking care of your health. When she begins to take these contributions out, diminish, she might still take part, but the excitement wanes. The money that was donated is now being invested somewhere else. Men explain this by saying typical stress, failing to recognize that there is a siphoning of emotional investment. Lastly, see how closeness has changed. Patterns. Emotional infidelity frequently comes before physical deception. She might become less devoted, less exposed, or steer clear of deeper discussions. Alternatively, ironically, she can become too loving or most theatrical way to conceal inner disconnecting. Both are misinterpreted by men extremes, believing everything is fine when the mind is elsewhere. Recognizing these minor clues provides you have power. The majority of mankind wait for treachery too. It makes a stunning announcement. However, if you can read your body's energy, words, as well as small actions, you can act quickly. Being aware is not paranoia, it's defense. We now must face the terrible truth. The majority of guys unintentionally speed up the extremely actions they are afraid of. The errors are subtle, frequently motivated by ego, presumptions, as well as an absence of emotional consciousness. Additionally, these mistakes lead to rifts in your partnership with women can, and frequently does, elude detection. Initially, men don't realize how powerful emotional pay attention. You may believe that offering financial resources, security, or physical presence is sufficient. However, women have a psychological craving for relationship, the sense that they are observed, comprehended, and coveted on a deeper level. Here, when a man fails, even he unintentionally leaves an emotional nothing. That gap doesn't stay unfilled. Someone fills it out by providing what he is unable to. Second, a lot of males overlook early warning indicators. You may observe a small, subtle flirtations and emotional disengagement with another person, or a change in her energy and disregard it as innocuous or momentary. This is crucial. Disregarding these tiny indications that convey a sense of complacency. Women being very perceptive, take note of this. Absence of focus on minor patterns frequently makes emotional lapses unavoidable. Thirdly, when males first get a glimpse of the indications, rather than addressing minor shifts early, mindfully, and peacefully influence, they become furious, accusation, or completely retreat. This is interpreted by women as insecure, unpredictable, or sentimental volatility, which frequently forces them to farther away men inadvertently produce the exact setting that motivates physical or emotional adultery. Fourth, Guys don't participate in the constant dance of longing. Relationships change throughout time. Attraction and relationship demand work, subtlety, as well as emotional intelligence. All too frequently, males believe a woman's loyalty is automatic. They cease courtship, cease generating enthusiasm, cease confirming on a mental level. And predictability smothers passion more quickly than any temptation from without fifth. Men tend to undervalue their part in the ecosystem of emotions. Every exchange of words, every action, every micro behavior counts. A contemptuous remark, a disregard for her feelings, or persistent disregard, even subtle, leads to buildup. The fertilizer is these micro moments for a shift in mood. Men tend to think dramatic failures are all that matter, but brick by brick, betrayal builds silently. The key is right here. The distinction between heartache and a devoted, powerful collaboration is consciousness and intervention. If you notice the subtle patterns, identify the stressors, and react intelligently instead of response, you take back command. You are able to emotional slide in reverse before it turns into treachery. Consider this. Are you taking conscious action or allowing assumptions and complacency control your connection? The majority of males believe they are doing enough. In actuality, emotional intelligence is not optional, it is necessary. Let's now assemble everything. Just awareness is insufficient. You must take action. Knowing the psychology of women, identifying the symptoms, and recognizing only when you utilize the triggers do they matter information to safeguard, fortify, and recover the core of your emotions connection. This is where the majority of males fail. They await the moment of treachery, believing that protection comes from knowledge alone. It isn't. Power comes from action. First, take back emotional focus. Don't presume she is inherently devoted since she loves you. Take your time, pose inquiries, pay close attention, and take note of the tiny information about her day, emotions, and what she wants. Giving emotional support is not optional. The unseen glue is what sustains desire. Without it, even the strongest bonds can be discreetly untangled. Secondly, keep excitement and uncertainty. Often, emotional wandering starts with boredom. Startle her with little gestures, new encounters, or contemplative actions that show you are completely in her emotional realm. You're not only her spouse, the source is you, of difficulty, fascination, and awe that maintains her emotional commitment to not someone else, but you. Third, establish psychological limits. Don't tolerate small talk, emotional shortcuts, or unrestrained secrecy. Deal with minor changes right away, and calmly ignoring them just makes them more room to expand. Women are extremely responsive to the dynamics of attention. How you? More important than what she says is how you reply. Your vibes convey whether emotional wander is acceptable or not. Fourth, put money into your personal development. An ambitious, self-aware, and self-assured man naturally arouses desire and loyalty. Emotional infidelity is frequently attracted to males who are no longer competitive, their presence, or their magnetic emotions. When you concentrate on your personal growth, in addition to safeguarding your connection, however, you generate a magnetic attraction that reduces the likelihood of emotional betrayal. Lastly, acknowledge that love is both strategic and emotional consciousness, focus, and subliminal effect. Psychological intelligence and manipulations. They serve as safeguards. You are protecting the connection, not regulating it. A man with comprehension. These ideas become nearly infallible to emotional lapse since he talks about the roots prior to their manifestation. This is your obstacle. Consider your connection, your behavior, and your consciousness. How, on a scale of 1 to 10, How much focus are you actually placing on your partner's emotional needs? Beyond appearances, beyond daily life, beyond what is comfortable. Write your response in the remarks. Also, if you came across this video, share, like, subscribe, and find eye-opening, share it with a buddy who should hear it. Because consciousness is more than simply strength, it's survival.